My name is Adam Woodward. I am originally from Minnesota, grew up here, and currently I'm in Houston for school at Rice University for Shepherd School of Music. Let's see, I started actually on piano, like many people. My mom taught me from ages 7 to 10, and I started violin around 8 and played both instruments for about 2 years. And then at 10, I switched to just stay with violin. It just felt better to me. And playing two instruments felt like a lot. So I just stuck with one instrument and have just stuck with that for the years.
Was there anything particular that struck you about the violin that can you remember back as to why the violin and not the piano? That's sort of an interesting. I'm always interested in when people have to make a decision.
Yeah, I had a brother who played the violin, and around that time, he played the first movement of the Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, and that piece just really struck me. Since at that point, I had really wanted to play that piece, so that became sort of a focal point or like a goal for me, even though that took many years to get to.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is funny because I had another brother who played piano, and so it's not like I didn't have other role models as far as other instruments go, but for some reason the Mendelssohn actually just struck me a lot. So that was one of my first loves as far as the violin repertoire is concerned. Yeah.
It was an actual piece being played by a sibling that somehow struck a chord with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's really
Yeah.
nice. So how is music important to you in your life? How has it become so central? Could you describe like what it means to you and what it does for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I spent a lot of time growing up listening to music. I would go to the library and pick out, a dozen albums or something and just go home and listen to them. And then YouTube came around, so I started listening to a lot of stuff on YouTube, and it just has always seemed like there's been so much music. And interestingly, violin was just sort of like a thing I was doing. I was in youth orchestra. I eventually started doing string quartet, but music was always sort of like the first thing. It wasn't necessarily the violin. It was just a way to get to the music.
Hmm.
And for a while, I was considering studying like music more as a whole rather than just like specifically violin. But that ended up, I ended up just going to college and studying violin instead. And so violin's actually taken a much more central role in my life now that I'm getting a master's degree. And, now I've spent a lot more time studying specifically the violin repertoire outside of just, music lessons as a kid. So music though, I think it's always just connected with me the most, or I've always connected with music the most. And I love other art forms too. I mean, I'm a big fan of like visual arts and contemporary dance and film, but somehow it's always just been music that's been the number one. So, yeah.
Is there anything in particular that, as a musician, as a young musician, you feel sort of drives you forward, or is a particular goal that you have as a musician?
I think, well, first off, I just really like the music. I've always liked the repertoire, and so as I mentioned before, like listening has always played a huge role in my development as a musician. I I think just the development of maybe my tastes for like listening or playing music has developed a lot, which has really is really the reason why I've been led to contemporary music, actually, because when I first started out and I was maybe 12, I would listen to great music, Grieg and Rachmaninoff and Shostakovich, but um, I I don't know. I was a kid, so there was a lot of music I didn't like, and I think there's still music that I'm learning to appreciate more, and there's just a lot. It's incredible to me how many worlds and languages of music there are. But what draws me to particularly contemporary music, I think, is just the fascination with like sound itself and the capability or like the things that we can do with sound
Sure.
that maybe you don't find that in Grieg, for example. Even
Right.
though Grieg, I love Grieg, he's great music, but it's just different, I don't know.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about something outside of, I mean, I know you're in a graduate program, but outside of music, maybe a non-musical love or sort of fascination with something that you really identify with or do or practice that maybe has nothing to do with your music, or maybe it does have something to do with your music. There's something that's non-musical in your life that's really important.
Yeah, a couple of things. Language, or foreign studying foreign languages, I think is something that I really enjoy. I don't necessarily spend a lot of time with it right now, but sort of as an amateur, like it's something that I really love. I've always been fascinated with languages since I was a kid. And in in high school I studied some Spanish and German, but I'm actually fluent in Russian, and I hope to gain fluency in a third language eventually. But it's just time and effort. So
How did you get fluent in Russian? Was it just through courses, or did you actually spend time in Russia?
I spent some time in Russia. I did some like volunteer church service stuff,
Mm.
and that allowed me to study it further once I got back. When I went to university, and I spent some time studying Russian, and it's just something I really love doing. Learning it and speaking it. So yeah, and then maybe something else. I do like reading. I think a funny thing with that is that I tend to acquire more books than I'm able to read at any given moment. I've definitely inherited that sort of trait from my parents of just collecting books, but I do also enjoy reading them. It just is a matter of time to get around to them. So,
What is?
but yeah,
I'm curious what that third language might be. What are the third languages that are up for the slot of being of making you become trilingual? Or
I think German is up there.
I see.
I studied a little bit of it in high school, and I always really enjoyed it. And it sort of drifted off. I can't speak German now, but German is definitely up there. Sometimes I think about learning like Chinese or something that's much more difficult to acquire than German would be for me. But
Because there would be
yeah,
no point of reference. It's not like it.
right.
What is really important to you in your life moving forward in today's world? Is there anything in particular has particular value or sort of high stakes importance for you?
I don't know that I exactly know how to answer that question,
Yeah, it's
but
very open ended for a reason. I just want people to sort of feel free to fill in the blank as in any way they want.
yeah, I think some things that I really value are listening to one another, um, like really trying to understand another person's point of view. And I think something that goes along with that is also just learning in general. I think listening and learning are two ways that we can learn about the world around us. And it's really easy to get stuck in our point of view, especially when sometimes things can seem very divisive and maybe polarizing. And I think that there are always things to consider from other people's point of views. So maybe that's like a really general answer to your
Oh,
question, but I think it is really important to learn how to respect other people, and then also desire to learn about others.
hmm, that's wonderful. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you perform the new piece at the end of the conference.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it as well.